All right, we are live. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Superlative Podcast. This is episode 18. I'm your host, Edward Bushi. Every episode, one guest, a founder, investor, operator, or someone who's competed at a level most people only read about. We get into the real story, what shaped them, what they learned along the way. So there's no edits, no post production, just one sharp conversation live. And yeah, let's get into it. Ashley Heron, a
Yep,
really big thank you for joining us today. Would love to get a small intro and what you're doing at Comma 8 before we
sure.
start.
Yeah, Ashley Heron. I'm the managing director at Comma 8. We are a marketing technology agency, primarily focused on health and wellness brands, mostly multi-location. So think three categories: your boutique fitness, your club Pilates, Pure Barre, Stretch Labs, Yoga Six, etc. Your big box gyms, so EOS, Crunch, and then med spas, so Skin Spirit, Alani, Check, Lace, etc. But that category is unique for us in that they share sort of common technology infrastructures, and we help scale those businesses to gain more members and grow in their respective areas.
Nice, nice. Yeah, thanks for that. So we're gonna park that for a bit, but we'd love to know your origin story, right?
Sure.
So before you started Comma 8, the agency, like what were you doing before? Where did you get your start?
Yeah. So growing up, I always wanted to work in the music business, and so went to Nashville to go to school, and
What
realized
a scene!
very quickly that I may have been a great musician in Sarasota, Florida, where I grew up, but I was a terrible musician in Nashville. And so quickly pivoted to not quickly, but sort of like naturally pivoted to working in the business side of it. And so I got a job at a record label, Disney owned record label in forever ago. I won't date myself, but spent about a decade working at record labels in Nashville in a really transformative time where we were servicing our first songs to iTunes and transitioning from CD to digital, and social networks were starting for the very first time. So I guess I am dating myself. But like got to be a part of like the digital transformation of music and work with some really compelling artists along the way. Everybody from Taylor Swift to Rascal Flatts to a bunch of other people, and there's some great sort of stories. The challenge with the music industry is that not that it was like incredibly romanticizingly fulfilling, and that like you could work really hard for something and then go to a concert and sort of see tens of thousands of people sort of manifest the reward that you have emotionally. But it was also a very small category in that
Mm,
my business today is larger than staff-wise, at least, larger than the biggest record company in Nashville. And so like upward mobility was really difficult. And I used to hire a company in Los Angeles that would help me sort of make noise when we had an album coming out, or we wanted to do something for the very first time. Like I want to do the very first augmented reality CD cover or album art, or we wanted to do the very first 360-degree music video. I used to always hire this company to do this in Los Angeles. And so they eventually were like, come help me grow that. And that company was called Hyphen. Moved to Los Angeles in about 15 years ago to help grow that business. There was like 3 or 4 of us in like an attic in Hermosa Beach, California. Scaled that and eventually got acquired in 2016. Grew that to about 250 employees, and did primarily, again, rode that wave as like a social transformation. So in digital and music, it was about sort of digitizing music and sort of riding that wave. And then at Hyphen, growing that business was really about riding the paid social wave. So Pinterest and Snapchat and Twitter and Facebook all rolled out paid social advertising sort of right when we were growing, and sort of got to be a part of that journey. Acquired in 2016 by a publicly traded company, worked there as an officer until 2020, and sort of wanted to get back to the roots of like building businesses, and also wanted to like narrow our focus. Felt like we were doing a lot of very large brands across a variety of categories, and wanted to find a category that was both kind of altruistic, and that health and wellness like helps people feel good about themselves. And if I'm going to be in marketing technology, I should be in that category. But also felt like when we scaled at Hyphen, we always had like a market expertise in an inexperienced market. So we had paid social expertise in an inexperienced market associated with paid social. And so felt like health and wellness, especially multi-location, is a fairly inexperienced market in terms of like, not necessarily the capacity or competence, but they have like a very technically complex problem that needs a very like presentationally simple solution. And so it felt like we could win in that category, that we could bring technical competence to a sophisticated technical competence to a category that needed it, but didn't quite know how to navigate that. And so started in 2020 with just a small group. We were going to be a small organization. And then, 2 months later, the COVID pandemic happened. And while, tragic event, both for humans and for society as a whole, and transformative to our culture, for our business, everybody needed a digital solution overnight. So every gym needed an online solution. Every big box gym needed a method of like engaging their customers, and they all needed a method of like both motivating and encouraging their customers, but like keeping their businesses alive. And so we had to grow sort of very quick, also sort of altruistically, and that like we wanted to help these businesses succeed. And the only way that we could like help them navigate that was to grow our staff. And so we grew really quickly, 2021, and then sort of have really over the past couple of years just like responded to that growth and continued to support our customers. And then now sort of navigating, what does it mean to be a marketing technology agency in the age of AI, and how are our clients using it, and how do we deploy that? So maybe because I'm old, or maybe because I've been fortunate, but I've always sort of been in these like transformative categories. Music was physical to digital. Hyphen was navigating paid social. Comma 8 was about navigating what does it mean to be health and wellness in an online and offline world. And now here we are again, navigating what it means to be marketing technology and AI. So that's sort of how we got today and where we find ourselves.
That's really fascinating that you've been in always been experiencing change.
Exhausting
and writing the
fascinating.
Yeah, it is a really fun story, right? So you moved from like music, right, and then got into like promoting and getting into marketing. Could you tell me like what drew you to like helping people get noticed, really? Like I guess
I think that was sort of ingrained in me in music. Music I think is easy to be distracted by the insight, right? Music is like, oh, I have a top song, or I'm a popular artist, or I like their music. But like in music marketing, we always used to say it's about making noise, right? And especially when we had like more structured release dates, I'm releasing a CD, or I'm releasing a new album. Like everything that we were trying to do was like to make people aware, just get people to pay attention. And so we used to do that in a variety of different ways. We used to just market either noise making opportunities, or we were trying to get in front of people. We were trying to run paid advertising. We were trying to do a stunt. We were trying to get on the radio. Like we were trying to always do these things. We did a stunt with Taylor Swift where we partnered with JetBlue to fly contest winners across the country. And in exchange for that, we did a pop-up concert at JFK's Terminal 5 with her. And so people were coming through security and sort of seeing Taylor Swift perform on a stage. And that was about like the content that was created afterwards. That like certainly it was like memorable for the people coming through security and seeing her perform in the terminal, but also like incredibly impactful for the content that we created afterwards. And so I think that like idea that if you could write out an idea in a sentence and you had unlimited time and unlimited budget, which we never do, you could do it. Whenever I would hire this company called Hyphen, who I eventually went to work for, that was like really empowering, that I could just ask them and I could write it out clearly. And if I could afford it and I had enough time to do it, we could deliver it. We could do that thing. And so I think that was like a really empowering, like intellectual transition for me, where I was saying, hey, I will never replace the emotional reward that I get from working for artists and going to concerts and experiencing the impact that music has on society and people as a whole. But I could like push myself to like grow individually as a manager, to grow like what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? What does it mean to grow a team? And I wanted to be surrounded by this idea that like if I had an idea, I could bring it to life, and that was like really empowering. And I thought that was sort of the main catalyst for me to like get get out to California. Obviously, the weather is amazing, but the sort of the reward intellectually was like strong enough to pull me away from the emotional reward of music to say, and how empowering it could be to just like build things that clients ask it to, or to solve things, or to have an opinion, to bring a client idea to life. Those even the way that we hire today is like we often like will find like a vague email from a client and ask a prospective candidate like, how would you approach this? And I think that sort of sense of wonder and sense of solving and sense of it's up to me to deliver the best outcome is like a really, I don't know, again, altruistic way of thinking about marketing, but it was motivating enough for me to make the leap.
Yeah, look, it's really like fascinating to hear, and also like really good to hear that, right? I wanted to double click a little bit, like brands and clients come up to you, right? And I'm wondering if there was a common thread in the types of ask that they had, at least when you were doing the music marketing, and then to wellness marketing, right? Like if you notice a common thread that people aren't, they took for granted, but you really
Sure.
helped along. Yeah.
I think sometimes I think like reading between the lines, like the common thread is like everyone is just trying to get to an outcome, right? I'm trying to sell more of my product. I'm trying to make people aware of music. And I think that sometimes gets obfuscated by the tactics involved. Like, we used to, I think we still do, brands still do, like build marketing plans. Like marketing plans are a huge portion of like what we did in music. Like what are the 100 things we're going to do? And sometimes that was like confidence building. I could present it to an artist and they'd be like, oh, my label's doing work for me. Like, here's the 10 things. But at the end of the day, like everybody's trying to achieve a goal. And so I think for us, like we try and frame that now today of like, what are we actually trying to achieve? Because that can weed out like really bad ideas, or that can weed out things that won't be successful. But I think the commonality is that whether it's selling a product or making people aware of something, that everybody's just trying to one, have an outcome, but also like have some of Maslow's like self-actualization needs. Like, how do I feel good about the things I do? Do I feel accomplished in my work product? And that's sort of like a universal truth, which is why it's also why too we like working in health and wellness, because we're ultimately helping either people feel better about themselves, or sort of manifest a journey that they're on.
Yeah, I can totally get with that mission. So one of the things I've noticed, like it's not just a creative agency, right? You do actually do production
Yeah,
technology as well, right? Like
yeah, of
how
course.
did you, it feels like a that was developed later on. Like what helped or what catalyzed you
Yeah.
investigating that?
So I think like to demystify advertising or marketing in general, there's
Yeah.
typically only like 5 levers that you can pull to run better marketing. If you think about like the paid side, you can change the bid, you can change the budget, you can change the
Mm.
targeting, like how much money am I spending and who am I targeting, right? But then the only other 2 levers I recognize is a very simple, gross simplification of marketing. But you can change like what people see, the creative,
Mm.
and you can change the destination, like where people go. And so if I can only really change the bid, budget, targeting, creative, destination, if we don't have like the ability to change the destination or what they see or how they interact with it, like I can't control the whole marketing journey, right? And so for us, it was sort of a natural, like, yes, we sort of grew up in our roots and our confidence was in paid. But if we didn't have a perspective on creative and we couldn't influence that, if we didn't have a perspective on the destination and how people
Mm.
interact with the brand, we were missing a part of like the full picture. We have certainly evolved over the past 5 years to be significantly more technology than paid media. I think it's a product of our category and how people interact with our brands. Like if I'm going to a club Pilates, like I don't know if I always need to see an ad, but I always need an app that works. I always need to,
Mm.
find my favorite instructor. I always need to find an available class. And so I think we've naturally moved in our category to more of a technology implementation, just because our category demands that a little bit more. Not that paid isn't a hugely important part of our business or our clients' businesses, but the technical solutions tend to be the lever that most entrenched customers, and in our category, is all about lifetime value of customer, right? Like I'm not purchasing a one-time product through e-commerce. I'm not buying a t-shirt once that I will wear forever. I'm trying to keep a customer at Pure Bar for 7 months instead of 6 months. I'm trying to like get them into a stretching routine at Stretch Lab. Like my journey is much more on the technical side. So I wouldn't say that that's every category's shift in focus, but our shift in focus has been more about like pulling all the levers and then responding most to what our category prioritizes.
It reminds me. I was chatting with, like, even before I started this podcast, I was chatting with some um, CMOs, and if I learn one key concept from them, it's the idea of a funnel, right?
Yeah,
You're at
yeah.
the top of the funnel, and then the goal of marketing is to make them go through the journey and go down the funnel, and
Mhm.
somewhere along there's purchasing points along the way. It makes me think, and I could be wrong here. Like the apps that you build for a brand is just like different touch points
Mhm.
within the funnel, and you just
Yeah,
want them to like go through the cycle again. If
yeah.
that's a fair way to characterize it.
Yeah, and it becomes the primary touch point. Like once I'm
Mm,
installed on their phone, I have the ability to communicate with them. I can re-engage lapsed customers, and they sort of like come back to the top of the funnel, right? Like people who were a member who have dropped off, they're back to the top of the funnel. I have to talk to them again. And we do a lot of work in the category about retention. So what are our loyalty programs? How do we get people to stay a little bit longer? How do we communicate to them at a time when they're typically at an inflection point where they may cancel? And so I
mm,
think maybe the perspective is the app is a utility, right? The perspective is it's there to make a class booking. It's there to manage my payment. It's there to make
mm,
a class purchase or book a med spa appointment. The reality is like it's a customer journey engine. And so how do I use that effectively to both re-engage, engage, and then retain? It,
yeah.
it is very much more than a utility, and it is a full funnel product, at least the way that we think about it, in terms of how we think about what the app and or even if it's not an app, what the technology solution is for
Mm.
our brands.
This is actually very fascinating because I want to ask, like, what have you noticed about like consumers within within health
Mhm.
services, like gyms or stuff like that, or health products that you've noticed about how they could
Mhm.
is there a way to characterize how the modern consumer of these kinds of products are like?
Mm. Um, I don't know if this directly answers your question, but it's what comes to
Mm,
mind. It's a very personal journey. Uh, I think health and wellness is it has a huge barrier.
yeah.
What modality do I choose? Do I like cycling? Do I like Pilates? Do I like yoga? Uh, and then there's like the barrier to do it. Like and it's like easily disposable. Like it feels like a discretionary purchase, even though it probably shouldn't be exercise. And so I think our customer is both reticent, has an insane amount of choices, right? You can have 4 different Pilates studios within a few mile radius, and so I think the overarching is it's like capital P personal, right? Like you get attached to even an instructor, and that instructor can be your motivator to retain. My wife goes to Club Pilates, and she like specifically chooses specific instructors, and she's specifically like, oh, I have to go to Blah's class today. Like I know she's tough, right? And or I have to go to Blah's class today. Like I really like someone else, and I think our customer is transient. Our customer is like it needs retention and needs engagement, but it's also like a very personal decision. So it's uh, it's a relationship, I guess, would
Yeah.
be a way to categorize our customer for the most part. Like how are we building relationships with them, more so than how am I just trying to sell them a service or make it easy to book?
But there's something like really interesting that you brought up too. Like if you make them connect with someone who works there,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
really cool.
I often
Yeah.
say like the studios that do well know their names, right? Like
Mm.
there's like such like a huge distinct difference between if I'm walking in to a med spa or a big box gym or a boutique fitness and it's like, hey Ashley, good to see you again, versus hey there, good to see you again. Like and it's
Yeah.
like it's like noticeable. Like I've talked to people about it. It's like whenever that clicks, whenever they hear that, they're like, oh, I feel like I'm a part of something. And maybe that's just like the human spirit overall. Like people want connection and they want relationships and they want to be a part of something. And the studios that do exceptionally well are the ones that have built community. And I think you see
Mm.
this in some of like the marketing speak, right? Like that, you know, I think CycleBar is really good about like promoting community. It's like we don't just ride, like we build and foster these relationships. And I think that maybe that's just like a natural part of human behavior that we want to be a part of something. And so the studios that do exceptionally well are the ones that craft that, and the ones that
Mm.
struggle tend to be the ones that like are just like trying to put on a, you know, rowing class, right?
Yeah.
The ones that do well are the ones that have fostered connections and the ones who make you feel like you're a part of something.
Yeah. Yeah. Not, like just by like riffing off of like what you just mentioned. Like I come from the crypto
Mm.
industry, right? And one thing that we love doing is going to meetups,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And like meetups in cafes, and now we graduated to doing co-working events. So
Mhm.
there's something to be said about like going to a
I
place
think
where
yeah.
someone's there.
Right. I think in a world that like so drifted to work from home or
Yeah.
online meetings and lack of travel, there's like still this sense of like we want to be pulled back to like physical connections and relationships. And I, I hope our world is migrating back in that way
Yeah.
at times.
Nice. Yeah. So I think so too. And in other ways, like meeting each other in a non-work kind of like setting
Mhm.
is it seems to be like resurging,
Yeah.
to me at least anyway. So you mentioned earlier about comma eight, right? And at a high level what you're doing. Uh, do you want to talk about like how the kinds of products that you put together and the kinds of help you bring with your clients?
Sure. I sort of paused because I think the type of work product that we do is
Mm,
consistent in some ways, but
mm,
like dramatically changing with AI and others. You know, our core delivery is like technical solutions. So we're building mobile apps, we're building websites, we're doing customer journey optimization. We're sort of building the digital infrastructure to that, you know, hey Ashley experience. You know, everything that sort of goes into running your gym or your med spa, as well as like making sure the customers are engaged. I think the thing that's changing though is that, you know, our category used to be builders. They used to be bespoke developers, where they would basically build from scratch, like whatever their experience is. Our category is changing, and that like they're tending to build off of like foundations. They're like, hey, I don't need to worry about the foundational stuff. I'm just going to tailor something for me. And so I think you've seen this like square spacification of our category where, you know, people are choosing platforms and then iterating as opposed to building from scratch like their personalized experience, which I think is both like incredibly accessible. It makes like technology significantly cheaper. But
mm,
for, you know, bespoke developers like us, like, you know, we've had to shift our focus to like have underlying foundational products that we can iterate as opposed to like just building everybody's unique thing from scratch. I think there's like some pros and cons to that along the way, but, you know, it used to be that like technology was like the, you know, I don't know, additive. I don't know what it is, but like it's like you don't run a business without a website. You don't run a business
ah,
without
yes.
a
Or you're
mobile app
invisible.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you're invisible. And I think um, there's so many like off the shelf solutions now that I think our business has been like, how do we complement those as opposed to maybe before we used to be like that was insufficient. You know, I sort of talk a lot of the times of like you hire comma eight when simple stops working, meaning like you're going to start somewhere. You're going to start with your Squarespace site. You're going to start with your, you know, MindBody branded app, or the native MindBody app if you're sort of a, you know, smaller boutique fitness concept or even like health and wellness concept. But I think for us, like we sort of sit in that space when like you've outgrown those tools and you're looking to have a more sophisticated customer journey, or you're looking for more data analysis, and you're doing Snowflake integration, and you're looking to visualize the lifetime value of your customers, or to try and find other insights. And I think every business goes through that, right? Like, I was on social media, as everybody is, yesterday, and there was like a video from when like the sixth employee of Google filmed like their like garage office of like their 6 employees. It's like every business starts simple. That was sufficient for Google, right? At the time, 7 computers, a ping pong table, and a house was good. But like now, like clearly wildly insufficient. And so I think there's like these natural phases of businesses that just have to start somewhere and then they grow. And we tend to be a part of that journey when they're ready to grow, as opposed to when they're ready to start. I actually like encourage businesses to not start with us because you don't need us. But you will eventually need, if not us, a company like us to help them grow as those businesses mature and they get larger. There's a big difference between a 1 location med spa and 100 locations, and they sort of go through these natural journeys. That there's like the Rockefeller Habits is a book, but it has sort of this concept of like valleys of death that most businesses, very difficult to ever get to $1 million in revenue, and then there's this huge valley of like companies who don't succeed in getting to $10 million. And then there's a huge valley in companies that don't succeed to getting $100 million in revenue, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we're like the valley navigator, if you will, that helps those businesses get to that next level.
Could I double click on that? Because like you're talking about how people can start using tools right away to build their business and grow online, but there comes a point where there's this invisible wall that they need help breaking through, right? Like what common sorry to characterize it, but is there anything common that people are not seeing that they need help on breaking?
I actually I've been musing on Substack. I wrote something about this recently, that I think people rarely understand when they've crossed that threshold. They only realize it after they've crossed that threshold and they've run into some degree of pain, right? They're now at 15 locations and they want to make an update, but they have to do it in 15 different places, or and I recognize that's like a very tactical, like wildly achievable problem, but for illustration purposes, like I think people never pre-plan crossing the line. They always respond to pain, and that's also like natural human behavior. I do that in my personal life as well. But I do think the common denominator is they've run into a block. They've run into a problem that they can't solve technically. They can't solve with the buttons that they can push, and that's sort of a universal limiter. It's like they've run out of the ability to scale their email marketing. They've run out of the ability to have a more sophisticated communication journey. They've run out of the ability to, they want to implement a special program that makes their concept unique, but they don't have the technical competence to do that, or they have a foundation that won't let them do that, right? Like Squarespace can't do that, or the Mindbody branded app can't do that. And so we tend to get in those conversations of like, I want to do this, but blah, blah, blah says I can't. Or that functionality doesn't exist, because all of these platforms are still a series of rules. There's still some product manager somewhere wrote a rule that you get to use, and some product manager somewhere hasn't written the rule that you want to use. And so, the common denominator, to answer your question succinctly, is they've crossed the line. They didn't know they crossed it, and they're blocked. And they tend to do that. But that's not like a negative. That's not a criticism. That's just that's the natural process of growing a business and evolving.
Yeah, so to speak, you outgrown the shoes. So
yeah. This morning, I have a 3-year-old. This morning, he got new shoes, and like he outgrew the other pair, and he didn't like his new shoes because they're stiffer and whatever. But like
maybe there were shoelaces that he had to learn how to use.
But they will be his favorite shoes in the future. They will be the shoes that he wanted to wear this morning if he just does that. Not to dive into too much kid stuff, but there's a show on Netflix called Trash Truck, and there's like a whole episode about sort of navigating the next and how that's how like breaking in your new shoes, they become your new favorite pair of shoes. And I think that's sort of like us, an analogy to
Yeah.
grossly aggrandize our business, our analogies. We are the new shoes that will be uncomfortable at first because we'll ask you to do things or we'll ask you to invest in things that you otherwise wouldn't do.
Yeah.
But we'll eventually be your favorite pair of shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Like it reminds me when, like going to a startup like analogy, I stopped using Trello and I
Mhm.
moved into a Notion because I loved how
Yeah,
flexible the blocks
exactly.
are, right?
Yeah.
And now we're in our system is very perfect for Notion. But now I'm starting to hit a wall too
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I want Notion to be the place where my agents can learn things,
Sure.
but then um, the agent doesn't trigger or go to the certain skills I need it to go to. So I have
Mhm.
to. There's a wall. I feel like I'm hitting it. I don't
I,
want to
I, I have
be
I have
left
bad
behind.
news for you. You will always hit a wall. you,
You
every part of your business, and that's great.
got
Like
to be
there's
a
a wall.
wall buster. Yeah.
There's a wall that Google's running into right now, and there's a wall that SpaceX is running into right now. There's always a wall,
Yeah.
and it's like how you navigate that. And sometimes you use
Yeah.
companies like ours, and sometimes you solve them internally, and sometimes you use companies that are bigger than us that are more qualified than us to do the solution. But the good news is you're running into a wall because that means you're growing your business. You're trying to solve a new problem.
That's a good
Um,
problem.
but yes,
Yeah.
the walls never go away,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah.
So yeah. So earlier in our short onboarding call, right? We talked about the concept of what is the value of the work, right?
Mhm.
In the past, you talked about it's you helping the client just press the buttons of this really complicated
Sure.
machine, right?
Yep.
It could be like building a website or doing a marketing campaign. But
Mhm.
now it's different. It's could you
Yeah,
explain
yeah,
like
yeah. I think my perspective at the moment, it's
mm,
mine, I guess, is that especially in marketing technology, we used to sell how to do things. We used to sell, you want to build a website, you don't have the tool set to do it, or you don't have the capacity or competence to do that. So you hire us. You want to run paid advertising, and you don't know how to do it. So you hire us. You want to build a mobile app, you don't know how to do it. So you hire us. And I think the how barrier is disappearing, especially with
mm,
AI. Like you don't have to know the buttons to push. You don't have to do that. There are resources for that. There are automations for that. There are agents for that. And so I've seen our category shift from like selling how to do things to selling what to do. And I think that's really good news for thinkers. I think the classic doomsday argument AI is like companies like us go away, and maybe we do in time. But I think the value shift is changing in our category. And maybe the value shift is changing in every category from you no longer need to know how to do things. You just need to know what to do and you need to
hmm.
ask. So there's like this
Right.
like amazing conversation about like the disappearance of UI and how we're moving to chat oriented directions. And I think that's like really a fascinating world in which we can have no buttons to push. But I think for
Yeah.
us, like fascinatingly good news is that we are now selling why, which we were always doing. We were always selling the why, or what, or sorry, we're selling what to do. We were always selling like I will be in the thing and I will push the buttons, but I will push the buttons in a specific way to do the thing that I think is right. But it's interesting to see like our shift and like nobody needs us to tell them how to do things anymore. They're asking us more and more, or valuing, maybe not even asking, it's just valuing more and more what to do. And that's where our work is shifted. We have, as most companies in our space do, we have a virtual employee who does a lot of the a lot of the how to do it, right? He's helping, we call him Anton. He helps
Mm,
build decks, he helps do insights, he helps review creative, he helps write meeting summaries, he helps do all these things that we were otherwise doing. And it's taken away sort of the drudgery of that work, but it's placing extreme importance on the last mile, the last 20% of work, whatever category you want.
interesting.
Like that has really increased in value. We used to say in music, you could record a record, you could get it on the radio, you could market it, you can make sure everybody's aware of it. But
Yeah.
if the stockroom clerk didn't go, this is back in the CDs days, if the stockroom clerk at the Walmart didn't go into the room and take the CD out of the box and put it on the shelf, Like it didn't matter.
Oh, nobody will hear it. Yeah.
You couldn't sell it. You couldn't sell it. And I sort of like, well, that's like obviously disappeared, and the analogy is still applicable. In that like you can do all of this work and you can do this, but if like you don't have that last mile effort, you don't have the human instinct and the human
Mm.
validation. Yeah, it doesn't matter that Anton did all this other work if you didn't review the deck and you didn't make sure the fonts were right and didn't make sure the insights were right. Right? Like it's replacing. I don't know, maybe it never disappeared, but at least people are talking about it more. That that last mile is the most important part of our business.
Yeah, that's really powerful to like even like talk about it. Like the idea. I mean, from where we are with like what we're doing in payments in my other startup, we've
Mhm.
noticed that uh, you can have the best low rate mechanism to send money abroad, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But if there's nobody, no store that your that potential customers can send to, no money will travel
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the stores are essentially the agents, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you gotta like work with them and make their lives easier and fulfilling by putting an app there. So
Yeah.
that makes yeah, uh, for like for lack of a better word, this kind of like partner or in the last mile is really like
Yeah. And that's
something you
sort
need.
of what we're trying to make sure our team knows. Like, we're
Yeah.
not doing agents, we're not doing virtual employees to replace humans. We're doing it so that I can put more emphasis on you as a human to like
Mm.
add the value that I hired you to do in the first place. Like, if you were only at this organization to push buttons that can be replaced with AI automation, like then you shouldn't be at the organization anyway, right? Like you have
Yeah.
to have that extra value additive because
Mm.
I think that a lot of organizations that you see a lot of layoffs, et cetera, that are like replacing humans with AI, and I think that's an acceptable strategy for businesses that had employees that were
Pushing button.
entirely replaceable, 100%,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's a tragically bad exercise for organizations where that human was adding value. Yeah, I have a friend who hired a contractor recently, and when I actually referred the contractor to him because he's like, I want somebody who can like help me think about things I wasn't thinking about. And then he like gleefully told me over dinner the other night that like he let that contractor go because he replaced her with a virtual agent. I was like, you missed the whole point, man. You hired her because she was the one who was going to filter the to-dos. And you just replaced her operational burden with value. And I think that is the mistake that people make with like the value of agents and the value of AI is
Yeah.
that they're like, I was able to reduce my workforce. It's like, well, what was that person doing to begin with? Like, were they not
Yeah.
like adding the human capacity? If they were just pushing buttons and you replace them, great job. Like, I don't know, great job is probably like a little harsh, but like you were able to optimize your business, that employee can go be successful somewhere else. But if you're actively trying to replace thinking in your organization, I think you're in for a rude awakening. Sort of down the line when you're just hiring back humans to do the things that the agent doesn't do as well as you thought. So.
You remind me on YouTube. Have you seen the meme where it talks about how this consulting agency went to his condo or hotel and they
Mm,
said, "Hey, to save money, fire the doorman."
mm, mm.
And they fired the doorman and they replaced it with a automatic doors and stuff like that.
Right,
But then they created new problems for themselves. This hotel, right? There were now vagrants, there were homeless people,
right.
or criminals walking in the hotel, and there was no person to really curate
Mhm.
people coming in and out, and people felt that they just had to get out of the lobby really quickly and into the elevators. It wasn't a fun experience.
Yeah, I think that's my caution to other
Mm.
CEOs uh, is like just make sure you're pulling the right change lever, right?
Mm.
There's like famous change lever analogs and stories about like people trying to fix something, then they did something that had an unintended consequence. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's so easy to react to like operational efficiency through AI, but like tragically bad outcomes can occur as a result if you're not mindful of like what are you actually doing with
Mm.
the tool and what is it actually replacing. But yeah, I'm not sure we're getting it right, but we're trying to be mindful of it along the way.
Yeah, this is brand new territory, right?
Yeah.
This new age we're in. So, yeah, it's always good to experiment. So, yeah, Ashley, I just want to say like this has been a really thought provoking conversation. I really love going down where we stand as builders and operators in this world of AI, right? And seeing how you frame it too, like it's and think about those issues is really really refreshing to hear.
Mm.
So, for folks who want to like get in contact with you, discuss
Yep.
more, like how do you recommend they reach out?
Yeah. Obviously, you can go to our website, common8.com, and get in touch. You can email me at ashley@common8.com. Also, I'm not sure if people are interested, but I've been trying to wrestle with what does AI mean to our category, and so I've been writing mostly to myself on Substack. So it's a hero. The blog is when simple stops working, but I think they're more like letters to myself to form, but hopefully maybe someone else will find it interesting as well. But those are
Or
three
use that
ways
as
to
a
get started.
foundation.
Yeah, it's the foundation for this conversation. At least it's forced me to type it out and to think about what it means for our category. And I think some of them are insightful, and some of them are just like me talking to myself. So read at your own risk, but that's a
Yeah,
good place to start.
totally, totally. All right. At that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for stopping by and listening to our conversation. This has been episode 18 with Ashley Heron from Comma 8. Thank you
Thanks, Ed.
again, Ashley.
Bye.